Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're testing out another newly buffed Pokemon in the Season 17 balance update, and that is INCINERATE on Shadow Chandelure. After seeing INCINERATE get buffed from 15 base damage to 20, I knew I had to try out the highest attack INCINERATE user in the Great League, so here we are with Shadow Chandelure. Initially, I tried it for a set with Credilli and Talonflame, but honestly, I didn't enjoy using Talonflame. It felt very alignment dependent, so I ended up switching Talonflame for Skeledirge and went on a 10-5 run with the team. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's burn everything with newly buffed Shadow Chandelure. Hopping to the first match, picking up a losing lead Credilli into Trevenant. I save switch into the Shadow Chandelure. Opponent's best response to a fire type is a quick attack Diggersby, and they're going to be in for a tough game. I'm able to grab a shield with the Flame Charge. Opponent is at enough for a Scorching Sands, so I will respect it with a shield. Opponent does not get the attack drop from the Scorching Sands, and I'm firing off Flame Charge number 2. This is now boosted. Opponent lets it through, and now they're going to have to deal with a double boosted Chandelure. What are they going to send in? They send in Trevenant. Incinerate does half of Trevenant's health. They get KO'd. In the back, it's a Lowland Sandslash, and the opponent concedes the match. We see an amazing lead in the next match, Credilli into Whiscash. Whiscash staying in this lead is quite a surprise. I'm expecting them to try and go for a catch, and they do. They send in Registeel, and I'm going to respond with Skeledirge. Opponent, very nice charge move timing here, firing off the Zap Cannon right before I'm able to make it to the Shadow Ball, and they do get the attack drop. The attack drop does mean that the Shadow Ball is now not going to be enough to KO, and I have to go for the Disarming Voice right away. However, I got a bit greedy, I tried to farm down, and that's where the attack debuff matters, is instead of the Shadow Ball KOing, they're able to make it to a move, and even though the Focus Blast is double resisted, not double debuffed, I'm forced to shield it. Back in comes the Whiscash. This is debuffed energy from the Skeledirge, but a Shadow Ball is still going to add up. Shadow Ball does a ton of damage. Unfortunately, I do not get the Disarming Voice. I send in Credilli and I actually click on the Rock Slide. Rock Slide is resisted, but they're low enough where they're going to have to shield this on the Whiscash. And this is slightly cheaper, so it's definitely the move to go for here. Opponent commits the shield. They fire off their energy on alignment, so I get an entire Bullet Seed for free. The Scald connects. In the back, they have Talonflame. I'm debuffed, but they have to respect the Rock Slide, and then it's all over. In comes the sweeper, Shadow Chandelure, and the opponent immediately concedes the match. Moving to the next match, picking up an amazing lead Credilli into Talonflame. And the Talonflame is staying in this matchup. They go for their move as soon as they get there, so I get an entire Bullet Seed for free. Now I'm going to look to throw one Bullet Seed and the Rock Slide. Opponent switches into Superior. Here I go for the Rock Slide. I honestly could have saved the energy, but my thought process was if I Rock Slide, then I can commit to a farm down with a Skeledirge and exit with a massive amount of energy to potentially threaten that shield back from the Talon. They go for the Aerial Ace. Typically in this matchup, you do want to go for the Frenzy Plant. Even though it's resisted, it does hit harder, but if you can make it to 2 Aerial Aces, then of course that's going to do more than 1 Frenzy. If they send back in the Talon, the Shadow Ball is going to hurt, and they send in Jellicent instead. I'm firing off this Shadow Ball. Jellicent is going to shield, farming up with the Skeledirge. Opponent chooses not to throw, and I'm able to fire off another Shadow Ball. If they shield, I'm going to go for the combo play. Aggressive switch into Credilli, and with no shields remaining, this Grass Knot is guaranteed to land. Grass Knot connects, dealing massive damage, and at this point, I can just save my remaining shield for the Shadow Chandelure. The Shadow Ball connects, they're forced to throw energy, and Chandelure is going to be able to sweep this game. The Surf is going to get the knockout. In comes the Chandelure. Opponent is going to send in the Talonflame. Talonflame never stood a chance. This Shadow Ball absolutely eviscerates the Talonflame, and the opponent concedes the match. Picking up a tough lead in the next match, Credilli into Defense Deoxys. I'm going to save switch into the Shadow Chandelure. Opponent is going to respond with Lantern. Almost every Lantern that I run into is on Spark, and that definitely helps Shadow Chandelure when it's being used as a safe switch, because with Spark, they can't easily farm down, so not only do they have to respect the Shadow Ball, because if a Shadow Ball lands, the Incinerates do enough that I can make a play for switch if I go down shields, but on top of that, my opponent has to throw, or I can make it to a second Shadow Ball. They threw at the last second. The Incinerate had already gone through, so I knew I would be able to get the Shadow Ball, so at the expense of 1 shield, I'm able to force 2 shields from a Lantern counter switch. So things honestly looking pretty good here. They're going to fire off the Surf. I'm going to farm up with the Credilli and go for the Rock Slide. Again, only neutral damage, but they're low enough that I can go for the slightly cheaper move. Rock Slide gets the KO. In comes Deoxys. I send in the Skeledirge. They have Galvantula in the back. Galvantula getting torn to shreds. I tank whatever they throw here. They're going to go for the debuff move with the lunge. And oh my goodness, this is not going well for the opponent here, as now Skeledirge with the Lantern out of the way in a prime position to sweep. Shadow Ball, even when debuff, does massive damage, and I'm already at Shadow Ball number 2. This is going to secure the knockout onto Deoxys, and we take the win. Picking up a very tough lead in the next match, Credilli into Skarmory. 2 better responses in the back, so I immediately save switch into Shadow Chandelure, and it's answered by Carbink. Carbink, these rock throws tearing Chandelure to shreds, but Chandelure makes the Shadow Ball. It's able to land, and that does a lot of damage to the bulky Carbink. I'm going to wait my timer here and then send in Credilli. I need to use Credilli to get rid of the Carbink, and then hopefully, with the rock type out of the way, Skeledirge can sweep in the back. Carbink fires off the Moonblast. That does quite a lot of damage. I continue to farm up with my Credilli, and I'm going to go for the Rock Slide. I decide to actually go for an undercharge here. I want the maximum amount of farm as possible, and I get it. Exiting with energy. Opponent has Skarmory. I'm going to send in the Skeledirge. I don't know what they had in the bag, but it did not want to see fire, and the opponent concedes the match. We see same leads in the next match, leading into Skarmory. Again, save switch into the Shadow Chandelure. Opponent responds with Whiscash, but with the energy lead, I make the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball plus the newly buffed Incinerate damage is so threatening that the opponent is forced to give up a shield, despite the fact that they have a Mud Boy into a Fire type. And now I can send in Credilli, I have the shield advantage, and I'm setting up Skeledirge to sweep. I believe the idea for the Shadow Chandelure save switch was initially recommended to me by Inadequence. Inadequence, long a fan of the candle, and now with the extra Incinerate damage, this thing is terrifying. I'm going to send in the Skeledirge, Skarmory, add enough for the Brave Bird, and I will respect it with a shield. No baits here. They full send the Brave Bird in the back. It's Credilli, and in this moment, I'm extremely grateful that I'm running a flexible fire type like Skeledirge instead of Talonflame. Talonflame does have better sweeping potential due to the fact that it can buff up its own attack, but being a fire flying type with basically no coverage against either a rock type or a water type, well, a water electric type in this case, being the Lantern, I often find that I just prefer running the Skeledirge. They go for the Rock Slide. Skeledirge tanks the Rock Slide, gets the farm down, and leaves with the Shadow Ball loaded. Skeledirge, you absolute beast. Shadow Ball connects, combo play into Credilli, and despite the fact that we were countered on the lead, the swap, and the closer, we still get the win. Picking up a tricky lead in the next match, Credilli into Shadow Shiny Dragonite, a massive flex for the opponent. Dragonite farming up energy here. I believe that was 1 turn before the superpower, so I am going to let that go. It is just going to be the Dragon Claw, and I'm going to immediately return fire with the Rock Slide. Rock Slide will be shielded up by the Dragonite. I continue to farm up to the Rock Slide, but the opponent makes a beautiful catch onto Lantern, and now I'm in trouble. Am I healthy enough to make it to the Grass Knot? I'm farming up with Credilli. I get sparked down. And at this point, I have basically already lost the game. I can send in Skeledirge. My opponent does not demonstrate good charge move timing there as they throw on turn 1 of my second Incinerate. But even that, I don't think is going to be enough to help me. They're able to give me an entire Incinerate for free again, at the very least 4 turns of an Incinerate. So I do now have a bunch of free energy, which is quite nice. I try and go for an undercharge here to put it into 1 Incinerate farm down range, but they barely live it, and I resign the match. Hopping into the next match, leading Credilli into Charjabug. 2 better responses in the back, so let's send in the Candle. Look at the Incinerate damage. Opponent gonna send in the Quagsire. I build up to the Shadow Ball. Everyone's been shielding it, so I decide to go for the Flame Charge bait. Opponent commits the shield. Look at the Incinerate damage from the Chandelure. I got the shield advantage that I wanted. I'm just gonna let this through, and now I can send in Credilli. I intentionally don't wait my clock, because I don't want my opponent to have the opportunity to switch out the Quag. Quag fires off the Stone Edge. I'm just looking to farm up with the Credilli. Opponent makes it to another move, and I'm just gonna let this through. I know that I can tank it. It is just going to be the Mud Bomb, and now I can go for the Grass Knot. Honestly, maybe I could have gone for the Rock Slide there, but I wanted to guarantee that I could get rid of the Quagsire. In the back, Oh no, they have Skarmory. It's all over for the opponent. Rock Slide connects. In comes the Skeledirge. They send in the Charge-a-Bug. Charge-a-Bug going to be firing off some energy. I commit the shield. It's the Discharge. They've shown that they're not running Crunch. And since they don't have Crunch, I don't have to use my second shield here. I can save it for a potential Brave Bird, as Brave Bird would do a lot more damage. They fire off their energy. Easy no shield for the Skeledirge. Discharge, that's not gonna cut it. In comes the Skarmory, and Skeledirge with the shield advantage. Just so deadly in the end game here. Looks like the opponent may have closed their app at the end, and Shadow Ball is going to take that win. Moving into the next match, leading Credilli into Defense Deoxys. Two better responses in the back, so I'm going to immediately save switch into the Shadow Chandelure. And look at the Incinerate damage on that Deoxys. This thing just does absurd damage. They go for the Psycho Boost. They're now going to send in Vigoroth. Vigoroth, of course, with the new move of Rock Slide, would easily get the KO. But my plan here is I am actually just going to go for the double shield and the farm down. I can leave with a lot of energy, and switch clocks are misaligned. So if they send back in the Deoxys, I should be able to grab a shield with a boosted Flame Charge, and then I'm actually going to save the candle for later and pivot back. I'm going to be sending back out Credilli here. I want to save the Chandelure, and Credilli should be able to output quite a lot of pressure. I end up throwing the Grass Knot on alignment because I just want to get this damage onto the Deoxys before they switch. In the back, oh my goodness, they have Shadow, Alolan Sandslash, and I have two Fire types. My main issue now, though, is they have a lot of energy on the Deoxys. However, I don't think a Psycho Boost will quite knock out my Candle if it's at -2. Of course, if they haven't debuffed themselves just yet, then that's going to knock out. But if they're forced to go for a move versus my Skeledirge, which I'm able to switch in here, I know I can tank a Drill Run. They can't counter down because I'm a Ghost type, so they're going to be forced to go for the Psycho Boost. And now that they're at the Psycho Boost here, they're going to be at a permanent stage of -2, which means I can send in the Chandelure. They try and make it to a potential Thunderbolt or a Rock Slide. They do not get there, and we take the win. Moving into the next match, picking up a bit of a tricky lead, Credilli into Shadow Dragonair. Shadow Dragonair can do pretty well against this entire team. Credilli does win the zeros, but it's by no means a comfortable matchup. Rock Slide will be shielded. I continue to farm. Opponent safe switches into Deoxys, and I make a misplay. I should have sent in the Skeledirge. A Skeledirge can tank a move here, whereas the Candle cannot. I'm going to shield up. Opponent has the Rock Slide, and I'm going to look to farm up to 100 energy. My opponent only did 13 counters. Rock Slide is 7, so I let this go, and here's where I find out. Rock Slide is 7-6. I lose 100 energy on the Shadow Chandelure, and I concede the match. Very, very unfortunate. We see another dragon in the next match as I lead Credilli into Altaria. I'm a bit surprised to see Altaria getting some play, as Altaria didn't really receive any love in the past couple seasons. As a matter of fact, it actually got debuffed due to Sky Attack getting nerfed. I'm able to grab a shield with the Rock Slide, going for Rock Slide number 2, and my opponent is going to let that through. I continue to farm up with the Credilli. Opponent is going to be firing off some energy. They go for the Sky Attack. That's going to get me low. I am going to save my energy, and I'm going to send in the Skeledirge. I know that I tank a Sky Attack here. They obviously won't go for the Moonblast since it's resisted. My opponent now going to send in Whiscash. And this is really, really tough. Their team so far is extremely strong into fire. The Shadow Ball will connect. I'm farming up energy here with the Skeledirge. Whiscash does not want to let me make it to a Disarming Voice, so they will go for the Mud Bomb. I'm very low on the Credilli, and the Credilli able to withstand the Mud Shots, make it to the last second Grass Knot. Grass Knot forces the final shield, and it's all up to Chandelure. Opponent, not the greatest charge move timing, as they're going to fire off their Scald. Do we get the debuff? No. I'm able to not get the debuff, and that is absolutely massive. I'm going to double shield here. It's the Mud Bomb. What do they have in the back? I have a lot of energy on the Chandelure. I have to keep in mind, there is still the Altaria back there. In comes the Vigoroth, but the opponent makes a catch onto Altaria. I'm going for an undercharge here. The Flame Charge will not KO, but the Incinerate will. Opponent can send back in the Vigoroth. This is now a boosted Shadow Flame Charge, and I get the Incinerate damage in as well. Flame Charge knocks out the Vigoroth from close to full health, and we take the win. Picking up a fantastic lead in the final match, Cradilly into Lantern. Opponent save switches into Vigoroth, and this is not the most comfortable matchup for me, as Vigoroth of course now has access to Rock Slide, which can threaten the fire types in the back. I decide to stay in with the Cradilly, tank some energy, and then go for a 1-shield farm down with the Skeledirge. Rock Slide is going to get me low, but I can send in the Skeledirge. I know that I can withstand a Rock Slide, even though it will hit for big super effective damage, get the Incinerate farm down, and leave with energy that I can use to threaten the Lantern. Opponent, odds are they're going to be sending back in the Lantern, and they do, throwing 1 Incinerate and going for the Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball will do a lot of damage to the Lantern. Lantern commits the shield. I don't want to risk potentially getting sparked down trying to go for a second Shadow Ball, so I just opt to go for the Disarming Voice. Disarming Voice will connect. Lantern exiting this matchup with a lot of energy. I send in the Cradilly, and Cradilly is going to be shielding up. They go for the Surf. I'm watching for the switch. In the back, it's superior. In comes the Chandelure. Opponent accidentally throws on alignment. That's 20 free energy for the Candle. Chandelure looking for the farm down. Gets the farm down. And with a Shadow Ball and a Grass Knot loaded, this game is over. The only lose con is to bait. Shadow Ball, get that Lantern out of here. And that's a good game. All in all, I had a ton of fun getting to run Shadow Chandelure. Shadow Chandelure, it's definitely a spice pick. It's on the spicier side of things. It is absurdly glassy, but due to the fact that Incinerate now does 33% more damage, it genuinely feels like a Pokemon that you can use in an anti-meta role and actually get some wins with. As I mentioned, I went 10-5 with this team. Trying it out first with the Talonflame, I think I had a 1-4 set. Just really wasn't a fan of how alignment-dependent Talonflame was. Like if you get a Talonflame onto something like a Cradilly or a Lantern, you just lose. Whereas with Skeledirge, it's a lot more flexible because it just has way better coverage. And the Chandelure save switch was surprisingly putting in a lot of work, as people were sending in a lot of stuff like Mud Boys and Spark Lantern, and they weren't switching it in very quickly, and allowing Chandelure to make it to that Shadow Ball forces a shield from just about anything in the game. Of course, I did have some luck on my side. I didn't see any Bastiodon in 3 sets. Bastiodon would be incredibly terrible for this team. That's definitely why Chandelure, in my view, is more of a pick for fun than for climbing, and this team as a whole is, it can function very well, but if you run into some of the more alignment-dependent RPS Pokemon like Bastiodon, then you're probably not going to have a fantastic time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.